Bună seara, dragi telespectatori! Bine v-am regăsit la o nouă ediție a emisiunii Viitorul Medicina Holistică. În această seară vom vorbi despre câmpul electromagnetic și veți fi surprinși să aflați cât de mult ne influențează acesta. Bineînțeles, mai multe informații aflăm de la doamna doctor Bălan. Doamna doctor, ați vorbit emisiunile trecute despre câmpul electromagnetic și despre ce atunci când ne deconectăm de la el.
Sigur că da. Și astăzi o să vedem că suntem parte de fapt a acestui câmp electromagnetic, că îi aparținem de fapt. Mai mult, suntem niște antene, o să vedeți la propriu chiar, suntem un fel de antene radio-TV, așa ca la dumneavoastră, cum emiteți dumneavoastră. La noi sistemul nervos se ocupă cu acest lucru, el capturează milioane de emisii, pentru că sunt milioane în atmosferă, atmosfera fiind aura electromagnetică a Terei de fapt.
Doamna doctor, de ce este important să înțelegem toate aceste interacțiuni de fizică cuantică?
Este important să știți pentru că medicina holistică le-a accesat, încercând de fapt să explice cum funcționăm, dar și cum ne dereglăm, pentru că dereglarea înseamnă boală și e important să știm ce stă la cauza bolii, da? Bun, se pare că trebuie să fim mai mult ingineri buni ca să fim doctori buni. Deci partea aceasta științifică, să zicem, de funcționare energetică, care ține de fizica cuantică, este foarte importantă pentru un medic holistic să o cunoască.
Doamna doctoră, dar cum adică noi suntem niște antene?
Da, titlul este foarte interesant. Da, suntem antene. Să analizăm ce face o antenă, de fapt. Să vedem la propriu. O antenă are rolul de a transmite și de a primi ce? Informații, da? Bun, și cum primim? Ce primim, de fapt? Păi primim informații din câmpul electromagnetic. Sub ce formă? Sub formă de unde, sub formă de vibrații, care se numesc unde de conștiință, o să vedem, pentru că sunt informații, deci sunt unde informate și informația asta se numește conștiință. Și transmitem ce ca și antenă? Păi transmitem gânduri. Da? Sistemul nervos emite gânduri, emite frecvențe, care ele ce fac? Creează realitatea în care trăim. Și acum unii sunt antene mai bune și alții nu. Știți că sunt pe calități și antenele. Depinde de unde le iei și cât costă. Avem calități diferite de și noi. Unii prind de mai multe canale că suntem performante, suntem antene performante, iar alții avem defecțiuni tehnice. Deci depinde. Acum prin noi circulă energie, știm asta deja și o să vedeți că putem deja să o măsurăm matematic. Este interesant pentru că există deja ecuații de energie, ecuații matematice de fapt ale energiei umane și chiar se poate calcula și putem matematic să facem chiar maximul de energie umană, ceea ce este foarte, foarte interesant.
I'm going to start talking about this human antenna theory that I came up with in my first book. Actually, I graduated to calling this a meat modem because there's a transmit and a receive function, but I only am focusing mostly on the receive function here. Just know the transmit part is that your senses produce a brainwave signal that represents your assessment of your skewed assessment of what's out there in the world, and that signal can be monitored locally or remotely. Okay, so that's your transmit function. And every thought you've had is transmitted because it turns into a brainwave signal. The receive side, I like to think of it as the human antenna, that you have this potential to receive the electromagnetic spectrum in various ways. Okay, we talked about the battery model of a human, that you have a positive pole and a negative pole. The negative one being in your tailbone at the ganglion of impar, and the positive one at the sphenopalatine ganglia, which is behind your nose, so it's very much affected when you breathe in and out through your nose. Okay, and that's the positive pole. So when you're standing up in the gravity field, these two points are extremely important, kind of like a lightning rod. The bottom of it's more negative, the top of it's more positive. Okay, and that's what causes the lightning to seek it out. Okay, we're going to talk about these electrical systems corresponding with the spine in here in just a second. So we'll just talk about the central spine. Is called, in the yogic tradition, it's called the sushumna. Okay, then you have two different ganglia of parallel nerves that run up and down the spine, where the Pingala nadi and the Ida nadi are responsible for kind of circulating the energy as it moves upward along the middle sushumna, or the central spinal cord. One of these nadis goes up and one of them goes down at a certain point in the processing. And these are connected very much with your breath. Let's talk a little bit more about the human structure and the antenna part. We've talked about the bones having a very interesting arrangement. Imagine the central pole is your antenna pole with the wires running down in between it, and then you have your antenna fins sticking out that are pulling off some wavelength or frequency out of the air. It's usually a wavelength based on the half of the dipole of the wavelength that you're trying to pick up. Okay, so also further imagine that energy is traveling through these bones along the central spine and has some interaction with this, what looks like a cavity resonator for energy, with some very strange holes in it that may tune to an engineer what we would call poles or zeros, either increases of energy or decreases of energy, and how that might circulate up and down the spine, coinciding with the cerebral spinal fluid running up through the lateral ventricles. So you've got a pretty strong connection with this electrical system here and the one with the brain. Okay, so I want you to think about that in terms of a human antenna. And actually Thoth mentions in his Emerald Tablets, he gives the energy that flows through the bones a particular name that's different than what he gives to the ba and the ka, for instance. So the idea of energy flowing through your antenna should not surprise you. We mentioned the central spinal conductor, these ribs that look like ribs right off of an antenna, and then these foramen or holes in the sacrum that could be changing the shape of the waveguide energy that you're receiving through your antenna. Look at your posture. Others do. And the reason I want you to think about looking at it is not from the standpoint of how do I look? Do I look good? Think about looking at yourself from the standpoint of lines and planes in relationship to the gravity field that you're trying to integrate with. Okay? A little game we play is if you can take your bowling ball sized head and keep the ear right over the shoulder, Even when you're bending over to get something out of a drawer or whatever, just play that game. Guess what? Over time, your body and your upper shoulders will begin to adapt to where the weight equals mass times gravity, the mass of your head times gravity, will start integrating onto your torso, okay? But you keep doing this, that curve's going to keep getting worse, and so is that one. But if you're not even aware of it, and you just keep doing it, keep sitting in that posture, you can't possibly get better. Even if you get your body completely limbered up, where you can be like this, and then you choose to sit like this, your body will go back like that. So once you tune in the gravity field right through the top of your head, you don't want to lose it. So you gotta work a little bit to keep it, okay? And that means paying attention, playing the gravity game. I'm going to go over these equations really quickly. I put them in both of my books, but I mentioned them on the last show. And it just gave you what the human energy was a function of weight and gravity and wavelength and frequency, and didn't give you much more than that. So I decided to put these down real quick so you can see where I started. I started with Einstein's relationship between energy and matter as my place to determine what the maximum human energy is. I substituted for the weight equals mass times gravity. That's a known in physics. I'm going to substitute that equation for the mass here. So weight divided by gravity is going to replace that. Okay, you see it here. The next thing I'm going to do is replace the speed of light, which is the wavelength times the frequency. Okay, that's a known. We've been talking about that. Anywhere on the electromagnetic spectrum, you pick a wavelength, and you can derive the frequency just by dividing into the speed of light. Okay, you see that? So we're going to replace that here, and we're going to end up with this equation 5, which is E max equals the weight times divided by gravity times the quantity lambda nu squared. Wavelength times frequency squared. Okay, the problem with the human body is we don't just have one wavelength and one frequency, we have 7. So we need to parameterize this and sum those up in order to see what we truly are capable of. And I'll just show you a picture of chakras again so you remember. So here's I equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for wavelength and frequency, okay? Because we're replacing the speed of light in here. Yes, they sum up to the speed of light, but these may not be operating perfectly, so what we sum up in that energy is the real thing. That's what we want, okay? And we may not have have every one of these working like we would hope. So you're not going to get the maximum energy without having a pretty advanced body that has all these chakras working, okay? And most people don't. As a matter of fact, I think majority of people who don't do anything about their human energy, they could spend their entire life in their first or second chakra and never change. And their personality and their range of consciousness will be coincident with that. And as you move up in consciousness, you'll start to see that more and more, that there is quite a distinction. So once we account for those 7 chakras and we parameterize it with I equals 1, this is wavelength frequency 1, and that's wavelength frequency 7, and we're going to get everything in between, we're going to sum them all up and square it, okay? That's the maximum human energy from a mathematical standpoint.
Da, doctor, este foarte interesant că avem și poli, polul nord, polul sud și presupun că probabil nu degeaba trebuie să ne punem capul atunci când dormim în partea de sus, care semnifică polul nord.
Sigur că dacă am feng shui, că am avut emisiuni și toată lumea știe că trebuie să dorm cu capul la nord ca să dormi bine în pat. Știți acest lucru, în feng shui este regulă. Patul trebuie orientat, e o întreagă poveste. Ați înțeles perfect. Suntem ca niște conductori electrici. Prin noi, de fapt, circulă energie, că spuneam, și se numește curent prana. În loc de curent electric se numește curent prana. Curent prana sau energie chi. Iar dacă se blochează această curgere a curentului, practic se întrerupe ceva, e ca un scurt circuit, știți cum avem de obicei, și atunci apar acele urgențe medicale, practic, și ajungem la spital.
Suntem cumva ca niște roboți?
Nu, roboții sunt ca noi. Sunt concepuți după modelul uman.
Faptul că deja există o formulă de calcul pentru energia noastră este fantastic, doamna doctor.
Într-adevăr, este rezultatul energiei chakrelor pentru că știți că noi avem chakre și este măsura puterii noastre, pentru că dacă se calculează energia chakrelor, și am văzut în filmulețul trecut, noi putem să ajungem chiar la maximul energetic. Sau este același lucru cu forța noastră de a crea realitatea din jur. Și știți, există persoane cu energie mare, știți
exact
acest lucru.
Sunteți dumneavoastră.
Da, și cum sunteți și dumneavoastră, de fapt. Da, acum, trebuie să vorbim cu telespectatorii, să le explicăm de unde apare această energie, acea care este debordantă, da? Păi, cum se menține mai mult, nu? Că mai avem probleme aveți și noi căderile noastre. Trebuie să știți că trebuie să reglezi chakrele. Ce sunt chakrele? Sunt motoare energetice. Și noi avem 7 motoare de 7 chakre, cum e avionul. Și dacă pică, ați văzut la avion, dacă pică un motor, avem probleme. Așa are probleme, așa avem și noi probleme.
Doamna doctor, cum arată structural vorbind antena umană?
Acum o să râdeți mult, pentru că trebuie să știți că e cam goală. Din punct de vedere material, o să vedem următorul filmuleț, este mai mult energetică. Este doar un set de vibrații.
We go out on a starry night, a clear night with no clouds, and we stand and we look around. We can be in awe, basically, of possibly how small we are and how large this universe is in many ways. If we look again with our microscopes into the body, we've been able to get into a smaller and smaller space. We go beyond the tissue to the cells. We go beyond the cells to the molecules. We go beyond the molecules to the atoms. We go beyond the atoms to the subatomic particles. And we find these subatomic particles are in fact coming in and out of existence. And then when we look at an atom, the particles themselves are a very, very tiny part of the atom. That in fact, what we're looking at is space, just very much as we're looking up at the stars above. We're seeing just as much space inside. That is us that I'm talking about. That in fact, these are our cells, our molecules, our atoms, our spaces. These are our spaces. This is us. We are made up of this space. The realization that we were quantum beings has come in the last 10, 15 years to me, as it has to the consciousness of many people in the world as well. I was learning about the entanglement of atoms, okay? Something I couldn't see, of course, but it rang true that in fact if there were two hydrogen atoms and one was spinning one way, the electrons were spinning one way, the possibility was that they could have an instant connection with another atom which was spinning the other way, spinning like this. And so actually what we were seeing was a picture that reminded me very much of the infinity sign. Okay? And the connection between these atoms, which was being demonstrated in laboratories, was independent of time and space. In other words, it wasn't this was causing that, it was they were together, they were connected. Einstein himself, when this was discovered, felt it was spooky. He actually it was called spooky action at a distance. One of the theories is that we all started with a Big Bang. Everything we can see in the universe, including us, started at an infinitesimally small particle. Okay? So there was a time when we were all bound tightly together in something so small you couldn't see. Okay? And that's where we all came from. And the theory, of course, of the Big Bang is that we have an expanding universe and that we've all come from that connected point, that point of connection. So if one looks at that science, it isn't unreasonable to understand how, in fact, over 14 billion years or so, that we are still connected. Okay? We're still connected. There is something within us that is instantly connected in form to everything else. it was beginning to dawn on me that in fact our body wasn't this closed system, isolated from the rest of the world. We're in fact an open system, that our skin was only sort of one step in the way of a continuum from the outside to the inside. And ultimately this led me on my journey to investigate Chinese medicine and the whole philosophy behind it, which was basically energy medicine. That in fact many of the things that we were classifying in Western medicine as diseases, they would be saying were symptoms. The body is relating to us information in the only way it knows how. Okay? And it's so important that it is listened to, because ultimately what I do is listen to symptoms. And it's in that listening that the symptoms reduce down. They don't have to make such a noise. We now know that what the Chinese would be calling meridians are in fact planes within the body, and they're planes of connective tissue. We have a skeleton of connective tissue that conducts electricity and transmits electrical current, and it infiltrates into every cell of our body as well. I became to regard an acupuncture needle as an aerial or an antenna connecting us, our bodies, to the outside world. Okay. This means our bodies ourselves are like these antennae for the rest, connecting us to a much greater whole, that we're all basically interconnected. Again, impressed by how acupuncture points worked on the body, I became intrigued about with the use of the ear in acupuncture to treat the whole body. Okay, and the concept that all the information in the body was held in one particular part of the body, the ear. Say we're making a hologram of an apple, and that was recorded on a plate, on a photographic plate. And when they put a laser beam through this photographic plate, they recreated a three-dimensional shadow image, a phantom of the apple. Okay. But the interesting thing to me was that if this photographic plate, if we cut a little corner out, okay, any little corner, so how big or how small, and did the same thing with a laser beam, you would get the whole apple as well. And what dawned on me is that it wasn't as if one thing was leading to another. They were coexisting together. All the information was being held in a very small part of a whole. If we extend that holographic model even further to the concept of that we are human antennae, it also explains that in fact the information around us, the universal information, we can call that consciousness, also lives within us. There are many now that see our body not just as a physical mass, but also a set of vibrations. Okay? And there are thoughts that we're formed on, our thoughts, music, the sounds of our voices are also vibrations and have an impact on our body. Seeing ourselves as what I describe as human antennae, antennas, enriches our lives, but also puts us in the position of ultimate responsibility for our own health and healing. This model allows us to understand much more about ourselves and what we can do for ourselves and what we can do for others. This is not to be something that needs to be kept in medical files or in the ivory towers of hospitals or research departments. This is to be owned by everybody and understood by everybody. The most important aspect of this whole model of health, the human antenna model, is that it's not about someone else, it's about you. You.
Doamna doctor, este foarte interesantă ideea că suntem sisteme deschise din punct de vedere energetic.
Sigur că da. De fapt, suntem conectați la o rețea multidimensională, pentru că e o întreagă rețea. Important este să știm, de fapt, că ne aflăm aici, în acest univers, pentru un singur scop, și anume acela de a ne cunoaște pe noi înșine.